There's only one city council district in Boston where the incumbent faces two challengers in the preliminary election September 26th. It's in District 9, which covers Allston and Brighton. Tonight we talk with one of the challengers, Brandon Bowser. Thank you very much for being with us, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
First of all, talk about your background in the district and professionally.
In the district, I've spent the last 5 years teaching for BPS schools, the Jackson Man in Allston and the Edison out in Brighton. I've taught art, I've taught middle school predominantly. I spent the last year teaching English language learners. And so I'm trying to take my skill set from as a teacher from the schools to City Hall.
What about what's driving you to make this run?
I really believe that that I'm running because I think it's time for a new chapter in Allston-Brighton. And I think that we're at a pivot point in our community, and that we need to advocate more for development done in a sustainable way that is respectful for our community and that maintains our position in the district.
Flesh that out a little bit, because there are some parts of this district where we've seen a lot of development already, and there's a lot more to come.
Oh, yeah.
As you get closer to Harvard, Brighton Landing. So what does that mean, sustainable?
Well, I think what I mean more by sustainable, I meant to say respectful and done in a way that leaves our neighborhood not changed dramatically. I think that development should be done in a way that leaves our community with benefits. From talking with a lot of people, I've heard of one thing in particular, is that we want to see our community left with benefits. At the bare minimum, that means access to the facilities, maybe renting a room for community meetings or for parties for families. But I'd like also to see developers put money into some kind of fund to help community organizations down the road have access to funds that they could use.
Of course, in past years, we used to hear a lot about concerns around density, lost parking spaces, congestion. Are those still concerns for you too?
Absolutely. That's one thing that we hear all the time at these community meetings is the need for plans to be put in place that when we put high density projects into our community, how it impacts not only parking, not only cars, but transportation. Because transportation is more than about cars nowadays. It's about mobility. I'd love to see plans put into place and studies when you're saying, let's build 300 units. How's that going to impact train times? How's that going to impact bus times? And because again, transportation is more about cars these days. It's about how you get to work. And some people do ride shares, bicycle, take the bus.
Well, one place where these two things converge is around the reconstruction of the Mass Pike, which is going to free up some land for development, a lot of land, I would imagine. People are going to meetings on this already, so what needs to be done differently looking ahead?
I think the one thing that I'm really advocating for is making sure that the community members and also organizations are at the table from the letter of intent through the impact advisory group all the way to the end. And I think that's the way we get the maximum benefits from development in our neighborhood. So I think that the first step is having the community there in the conversation about what development means.
Of course, another thing we're seeing in this district is some innovative approaches to safe biking, especially along Commonwealth Avenue. What about the rest of the district?
I think that we can do better. Especially
and you should point out, you do a lot of biking.
I do. Predominantly, my mode of transportation is the bike and ride-sharing apps and the T. But when I go around the city, I see some parts of the city are better equipped than others, and I think that there's organizations out there that are advocating for more bike lanes, which I think is a great start. But it's all about how bikes, buses, and cars and foot traffic work together, and that's the real trick, is how we're going to have the next generation of transportation, I think. And how it all integrates together.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Brandon Bowser, a candidate for Boston City Council in Allston-Brighton's District 9. Brandon, you've done work as a teacher, and I know you mentioned that at the outset here, but how does that fit into what you see yourself doing on the City Council? Well,
in the last 5 years, I've worked with families and students, and I've really had a good scope of not only just Allston-Brighton's community, but the city at large. And I've fallen in love with this community. It's my adopted home, and I've worked hard to make sure that students come into the classroom, learn as much as they can, and I meet them where they're at. And I think that that's one thing I've really tried to work hard at, is meeting people where they're at. And so that's one of the skills I'm trying to transfer from the classroom to the community organizing kind of aspect of this.
Now, in this district, there have been some achievement problems at some of the schools. Talk about what should be done around that.
You know, I think there's some structural issues happening in every school in our country, and especially urban schools. It breaks my heart seeing Brighton High lose so much funding, especially being at the level they are. But I'd like to also focus on like the things we're doing great in Allston-Brighton. We have some great schools, some great programs. The autism strand at Jackson Man is phenomenal. There's some inclusion programs that are really exploding, and we're seeing some really great responses, I guess, to extended learning time in the classroom. So we have some structural issues across the district that we need to address, but we're doing great things. The teachers are top notch in Allston-Brighton and across the district.
Well, one problem is facing many districts right now is displacement from a hot housing market. One idea that has been proposed to the council already is to give more protections to tenants, especially just cause eviction protection. Would you vote for something like that?
I would absolutely support the Jim Brooks Stabilization Act. I think it's a great first step to addressing displacement and addressing unjust evictions. But I think it also highlights a larger issue in the city of tenants not knowing their rights. I mean, Boston's at I think it's a 65% renter market. Allston-Brighton is 85%, and that's part of being a tenant is knowing what you have rights to and what your landlord can and cannot do. So I think it's a great first step. I think we can go further, and it's specifically around providing paperwork in multiple languages and making resources available online, clearly written in multiple languages.
We should mention you've got some more details on your campaign online, so if people want to check that out, what should they look for?
You can go to brandonbowser.org, or my handle for Twitter, Instagram is VoteBowserD9.